The cattlemen of the Victorian high country epitomise that heroic kind of image, or at least they would seem to, in the eyes of most ordinary Australians. In the eyes of conservationists, it's quite a different picture. They accuse the mountain men, with their horses and cattle, of doing more harm than good to Australia's heritage, especially the magnificent high plains environment that's been used as grazing country since the first proverbial billy was boiled. Take on the mountain men, and you know you've got a fight on your hands.
Small, selfish elites want to block the interests of the whole country.
Man, I'm not one of you blowings. Just come here from England and get a... Say, well, you got your parliaments from these people, these children in schools. You brainwash them.
Why do you
and
want
then
to
you get your following. Yo, this is good publicity for you.
When the mountain men of northern Victoria make a point, it stays made. In fact, they haven't really got much time for the arguments against them, as Dr. Jeff Mosley from the Australian Conservation Foundation found out when he confronted them.
But you can't come here, look, you can't come here 20 years ago and tell me what's on the high plains. I've been there all my bloody life.
"5:30. Early morning at the Fitzgerald spread outside Omeo. The mountain men preparing to drive their Herefords north to the summer grazing runs in the high country. It's a 2-day ride ahead through terrain much tougher than this. It's no wonder they write poems and make movies about this place. You've only got to be here to see why. It's pretty special. But then again, the cattlemen probably are too. You could say that the argument going on about the high country boils down to this. What's more Australian, this magnificent mountain country itself, or the mountain men who live and work here? Whichever way it goes, there's certainly no easy answer to that question.
Grass was only grown to be eaten by stock of some animals, so it's definitely got to be an advantage of the country for the cattle to come up and eat it, because that's what God put it there for.
Kevin Kelly's been coming to the high country every year since he could ride. Although Kev will be out of the saddle for a while since he copped an unfriendly nudge from one of the herd. Kevin, the way things are looking, how long you got to go up here?
In 1991, we get kicked off. We go.
The high country runs are a good 40 miles away. They still use miles in this part of the world. These blokes were just about born with one foot in the stirrup, as they say up here. Well, you might ask, why do the Bogong mountain men drive themselves, their horses and their cattle 2,000 metres up into the Alpine plains anyway? Not a bad question, especially when you discover that the snowgrass up here is not exactly cordon bleu cow food. It's low in proteins and other nutrients. The cattlemen have an answer for that too. They say the high plains are drought-free. Plenty of fresh water, plenty of shade, lots of grass, even though it mightn't be the greatest fodder in the world. But you can't help feeling that at least part of the reason they keep making this annual Alpine pilgrimage is because generations of mountain men before them have done the same thing. Maybe they're just trying to keep the legendary man from the Snowy River alive. Conservationists like Jeff Mosley are dead against what you see here. Mosley claims if the cattle are left in the high country, they will cause irreparable damage to the snowgrass, to the water catchments, the soil, and the unique alpine native flowers.
We're really here in a very important part of Australia, part of the high mountain country of Australia, which covers only 1.5% of Australia, but it's important far beyond that size. And we think it should be part of a great national park. It'll be a park for all the people. We should be able to choose to have this as a park and not just a cow paddock as at the present.
The Conservation Foundation presents these before and after photographs of the neighbouring high plains as evidence of the damage cattle caused when they were allowed to graze in the area. If you believe the environmental lobby, the entire Bogong National Park will wind up like this if the cattle stay. For their bit, the cattlemen reckon they are as much a part of the high plains environment as the trees they drive their cattle through or the grass their livestock feeds on. That's why Dr. Mosley's scientific research isn't worth a whip crack to them.
But what in fact is happening now is that the grazing pressure is sufficient to prevent the full recovery of the natural environment.
You've been out here 20 years, and whose opinion or whose theory did you base that on in the first place? Because no way known in the world could you form an opinion on saying you've only been here 20 years and seen that country for only 20 years, whereas the likes of us have been going there every year for a bloody 100 years, myself over 50 years.
You're there to graze cattle. You're observing the countryside,
I know,
but
now
you're
you
not
tell me something
making
else.
a specific
What did
study.
God put grass on this earth for?
They put our grass on the earth for many
stock to
different
graze,
things.
for you to survive and me to survive and everybody else to have meat.
To some, these men are a part of the great Australian bush legend. Others, of course, the impact of the mountain cattleman is quite the opposite. He's a myth rather than a legend, and he's done more harm than good to the proverbial Australian heritage. Sorry about the get-up. I'm not exactly all that comfortable up here either. Don't know about the cult from old regret, but this one could certainly get away. But this is a nostalgic salt-of-the-earth Australian image that their opponents say the cattlemen are exploiting out of self-interest. According to the conservationists, the cattlemen from the high country have had a dream run with the sympathetic media, who've seized on the myth but ignored the menace.
Well, listen, I'm 78, and I first went onto the high plains when I was 9 years of age, and I've been going there, I suppose, practically ever since. And I'm going to tell you what the conservationists have done to the high plains. They've buggered it up, and that's plain speaking.
Put on your Mac.
Put on your Mac.
It's part of my living, and also I think it's part of my heritage. We've been coming here for 100 years. The family's been coming here for 100 years, and it's just that I think it's just part of my heritage that I ought to be able to stay here.
Is it just a place to graze cattle, or does the hill country mean more to you than that?
Yeah, it's more. It's in the blood.
When you take in the vast areas national parks have already got, and to stress the opinion of having more and more all the time, it just seems like a heap of greed to me.
Cattlemen would be welcome there, of course, but not cattle.
I guess what these people are saying is, what is a cattleman without cattle? You're saying they can go to the national park without their cattle?
Well, they can graze over the whole of Australia. We're talking about a very small part of Australia. I don't believe there should be a future for the cattlemen anywhere in the Alpine National Park.
As things stand at the moment, these cattlemen won't need their generations-old mountain huts after 1991, a short 5 years away. The pen pushers back in the city may think the battle for this part of the high plains is over, but the Fitzgeralds and the Kellys won't give up that easily. They're not just mountain men, they're also Irish.
We keep coming back, whether we're allowed or not.
You will do that?
Yeah.
So that if the government was to rule that you couldn't come back and graze here,
That's my idea, we'll come back.
you'd defy the ruling?
Yeah.
If you haven't set eyes on the Bogong High Plains, you've really missed an exquisite piece of Australian geography. It's alpine bush and big skies, but it's also cattle country. In fact, it has been for around 150 years. They really know these tracks, but they could also be the last in a long line of alpine stockmen if the battle for the high country goes again. Harry, you've been coming up here longer than any of these blokes. How do you feel about the whole idea of the cattlemen being pushed out of here?
Well, I don't like it.
Who do you reckon will win this battle? You've been around a long time.
Well, I know who should win it, and that's the cattlemen.
So what would you say to people who'd reckon that even one cow in the national park is one too many?
Well, I'd say it's a lot of bullshit.